Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Cat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants.
Pirate vendors. Aargh! Today, we're listening as Kat and Bridget and former co-host Justine Marzoni-Mead chat about those folks who circumvent market processes and set up impromptu to take advantage of your market's hard-won bounty. This episode was recorded and originally broadcast in January of 2023. Enjoy this encore for longtime listeners and helpful information for our newer followers. It's a pleasure to share it with you again now.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Vendor 101, creating successful farmers market, farmers, and vendors, and streamlining the application process for market managers. This self-paced online class helps potential vendors decide if farmers market life is right for them, with just a small investment of time and money. Qualified vendors will learn to produce, package, and present their products using effective marketing, display, and customer service skills. Working with market managers, educated vendors create thriving farmers markets. Find more information at vendor-101.com or by clicking their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everybody. This week, we're discussing an issue that all market managers seem to face: pirate vendors. No, we're not talking about buccaneers that sail the seven seas. Who writes this script? We're talking about sellers and solicitors that set up in or around a farmer's market as unofficial vendors. Boo.
Yeah, we've all seen this.
Unofficial. These guys, we've all seen them. These guys get under my skin, except for one.
We'll talk about our...
We do have one. We have a pet pirate.
A pet pirate. It's my friend.
That's true. Which is bad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have pets. You shouldn't like any of them. Consistent about these things. Well, you just have to be consistent. That's the best way to set a rule and enforce a rule. That's right.
Terrence is so sweet.
He is. He's the best. He's the best.
Well, why are pirate vendors an issue? I guess start with that.
I know. It seems sort of, I don't know, like exclusive and like we're trying to shut people out.
Or
but that's
gatekeepy.
Gatekeepy. Yeah. That, I mean, it sounds like that, but you just got to think about it as an equity thing for one thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's unfair distraction from the vendors that actually pay to be at your market, which pays for your permits and your insurance, which pays your staff to be there, which pays you to do the marketing to attract all those customers that come. So it's kind of like that guy that comes to family dinner and never brings anything to the potluck and doesn't chip in, but, gets to take advantage of what everybody else has created.
The pirates are eating a free meal at your table.
At your table.
Someone goes to a restaurant, it's like, I'm not going to eat anything. And then they end up picking off everybody's plate.
Yes, this analogy works.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. And I feel like when I talk to some pirate vendors, to try to explain why they shouldn't be there, a lot of times they say, well, hey, I don't have insurance. I don't have a business. I'm just getting started. I should be able to sell as well. I should be able to make a living as well. So I think taking the approach hey, we have resources for that. We have education courses, we have help. There's a lot of free business help that are, in San Diego, at least. And I imagine in a lot of places, there's places people can go to get their business started and to be a legitimate business. And I just feel like that's important to kind of explain that difference between what they're doing and what the other vendors at your market are doing, which is going the avenue of getting their business started too. And they're also small businesses. It's not like they're standing outside of Walmart. Right. It's you're standing around a bunch of people who have built their business up from the ground up and also have very thin margins. So it's
I feel like they should go stand outside of Walmart. Don't impinge on really tiny businesses. Don't get on the doorstep of a really tiny business that's kind of paid their dues and their insurance fees and their permit fees and things to be there. I mean, if you really just want to get started, cool, but no fair sliding in on where everybody else has spent a lot of effort and a lot of money to create a critical mass of customers. I mean, that's what they're taking advantage of without contributing to that effort.
Exactly.
So that's frustrating. And actually, so there's a couple of other things that are issues, and this is for their protection as well, is our vendors, our farmers and vendors all have insurance, and the market holds insurance. So that if somebody trips over that table that they've set up kind of in the walkway, they don't have any coverage to protect the other vendors and the market from liability for that. Whereas everybody else who is admitted to our market has to sign on, pay their insurance, deal with sharing that part of that risk.
Yeah. Or if somebody bought a cookie from a random person that was set up outside the market and then contacted the market and said, hey, I got sick from this food that I bought, then it would be like, well, I don't know who that is. I don't have a relationship with that person. I don't have their contact information to tell them that one batch might have soured.
Right.
You don't have any sort of relationship. There's no accountability for people that are operating on the fringes of your established business.
Yeah. And we have an obligation to protect the public. That's what we do as farmers market managers. That's what these individual businesses do as food makers and farmers, is that they process their food and make sure that their food is presented in a safe manner to protect the public health.
Yeah.
So you can't just
It has all the ingredient labels on there so that
Exactly.
you don't have people having allergic reactions. Didn't we have a pirate one time set up near the park that was selling cookies that were grown-up cookies, shall we say?
Yes.
Edibles.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
remember that. And I was like, no, sir, excuse me. And the kids were like, I want a
also,
brownie.
how much?
And also, well, come back after the market. We'll talk to you then.
Little kids are like, I want a brownie or I want that chocolate chip cookie. And a parent maybe that was busy because it's a busy market and isn't paying close attention could have said, sure, here's $5, go get one.
Yeah.
I mean, there just wasn't any control. And it was very odd because they didn't seem to be aware that needs to be monitored.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those things create liability, create safety hazards for the public, and we're in charge of monitoring that for our farmers and vendors. But how do we do that with somebody that hasn't gone through the process and just sets them on a corner right next to us?
One for me that, as the gal that is oftentimes in the info booth and also somebody that helps with messaging and marketing, I think another really big reason that pirate vendors or unofficial vendors can pose a threat to your market is because it's really confusing for shoppers.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, like somebody that maybe has been to your market for the first time, or they just don't really know a lot about farmers markets, if somebody is set up right on the edge of your market, the shoppers don't know where your market starts and ends, and they just assume that person is a legitimate vendor and that they've been vetted. And there is the farmers market there is a lot of like implicit trust there. When people are shopping at the market, they trust that there's, that these people are agreeing to certain terms, that what they're selling is healthy and local. And so I think people can relax when they're shopping because they're like, oh, somebody's looking out for me in terms of who is selling here. And if there's somebody that hasn't followed those protocols, you might lose shoppers if something bad were to happen. And it just gets confusing of what is the market and what isn't the market. And you don't want people to think that these people that you don't know who they are, they're representing you, whether you like it or not, if they're there.
Exactly. It really confuses what your values are and what your curating goals are.
Yeah, just to say, I mean, we've curated our market so specifically and with intention. And so I think that people can feel that when they shop the markets. And a lot of market managers are really intentional about that. And so if someone's plopping down a table in the middle of your market with some schlocky thing, or maybe like a duplicate product where maybe you wouldn't have it so close to another product. I mean, like all these things that we think of when we make the map, it's like someone popping in there screws up your whole map and really messes up with like kind of the psyche of the shoppers and how they feel about the market. So definitely it, gets in the way of the trust. Do pirate vendors care about that? Probably not.
Oftentimes, no. So before we get too far, I also want to we're using the term pirate vendors because I didn't really know what else to call these folks. But they appear in many forms and in many different personalities and tones. Oftentimes, these people are generally good-natured and really have no idea. And
they just don't know.
They just don't know. They're not there to intentionally mess with you or to be the bane of the market manager's existence. They're not like these little demons sent to mess with us. They have no idea, really.
Well, so because pirate vendors are not the only people in the world that don't realize that farmers market tents don't just rain down from the sky, that there's some organization and there's regulations and there's intentionality about it. They just assume, oh, all these people showed up and set up tents. I'll just set up my tent.
And some other markets, I think, allow a lot more kind of pirate vendors or casual vendors, you might say. And so even if there is a market say by the beach on Wednesday. That's by your market. Might have a more casual approach to that.
Yeah.
Letting people kind of pop up. You know, not really food vendors. I don't think they allow that, but like jewelry.
Merchants.
Yeah, and like art on the street and stuff. But maybe your market, there's just not room for that, for someone to safely do that without like obstructing a walkway or, being too close to a vendor with a similar product, things like that. So it does get confusing. I mean, I don't think I would say 9 out of 10 like pirate vendors that I have seen over my long market manager career, they are not coming in with malicious intent for the market. They really aren't. They're just like, hey, a crowd. Yeah, making a buck. Hey, a crowd. Someone sent them. I mean, we're also talking about folks that have a backpack full of Luna bars.
Yeah, like street teams, handing out freebies. So like energy drinks, granola bars. We recently had, at our market, we had that brand. It's called like Once Upon a Farm. It's like those little like baby smoothies. I had one. They were really good.
Okay. I'm calling Jennifer Garner.
I didn't need it in the info booth. I took it for later.
I know sometimes I'm like, get out of here, but I'll take one.
Yeah.
Before you leave. I know.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Farm was there? Seriously, we're calling Jennifer Garner. She's going to either have to lock it down or come speak at our conference.
Yeah, or give us a grant for EBT, Market Match or something.
Cool.
Like sponsor. Yeah, but it's, sometimes it's food or Red Bull or whatever. And I feel like those street teams, for the most part, I feel like I've had like 1 or 2 psychotic people that just like were in the mood to fight and just wanted to pick a fight with me. But honestly, if you approach them and not like, get out of my market, but more like, hey, just so you know, like these are small businesses and they have paid a lot of fees to get their food permit and they make this like really unique product and they've paid to participate in the market and they have insurance and this is their livelihood. Yeah. And because you're giving away free things, shoppers are less hungry. And so they aren't buying their products. And if they don't make a certain amount of sales like per day at this market, that's their business. And that's like food on the table for their family. And you just try to kind of explain it to like, it's usually just like these 20-year-olds or whatever. But I have always had a really good response. And they go, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I didn't even think about that. Like we just saw a crowd and we came over and
my boss told me come.
Yeah. Or my boss told me come to the market.
Young gals in small shorts. That are like, okay, I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. So they're just like, where else do you suggest? And I'm like, I don't know. There's like a park down the street. I mean, like just
a bar down there.
Yeah. Like a place where there's not people selling food. Yeah. I'm like, I go just FYI, like be aware and go to a place where there aren't legit businesses selling food to make a profit. Just go there. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like go to the waterfront or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the people down there feel about that, but they can deal with that.
Yeah. So we also get, random hawkers selling things like crystals or CBD products or little poetry books.
Yeah.
Or, and then there's your typical solicitors, petition signers, Girl Scouts, which unfortunately we've had to kick out our fair share of Girl Scouts from the market.
I think we're not the only ones. I just had a conversation about that at a farmers market meeting. It's sort of sad. I will say that the girls don't seem to mind. Every once in a while, you get an aggressive parent.
Oh,
of a Girl Scout.
They want to get rid of those cookies.
I know.
Yeah, they want to get rid of the cookies. They want their kids to go to camp. Like, totally understand your whole premise. They say, oh, we can sell in front of the grocery store, and the grocery store are selling food for profit. And it's like, okay, well, that's different. That's bonds. Go over there. But I mean, honestly, there are rules with like the Girl Scouts of America where you cannot just stand on the corner like next to other businesses. So typically, I'm like, hey, you're not really allowed to do this. I don't want you guys to get in trouble. And like, that guy makes homemade cookies.
I really don't want you to lose your badges.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you to lose the entire vest.
Right.
Well, we've actually had conversations with the local Girl Scout headquarters kind of thing, and they've agreed that they can't sell within X amount of feet of the farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a locally produced product. I understand it's cute girls in little uniforms selling them, but it's not locally produced in any way.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it on a national podcast, but Girl Scout cookies are full of a lot of processed kind of stuff that we don't actually allow in our bakers to use.
I just close my eyes when I eat them. I don't know the ingredients, but
they're so good.
That is true.
But they don't actually fit our model. Mm-hmm. But our Girl Scout Council has told people they can't sell there. And so when we see Girl Scouts at the market, oftentimes it's a parent that's determined to ignore the rules, or sometimes it's like a pirate Girl Scout, because I walked up and said, we've talked to the council, what's your troop number? And had people say, oh, I'm not sure what my troop number is. Well, I got to tell you what, every Girl Scout I know knows her troop number till the day she dies. That's just, I'm suspecting there that that's not a legitimate Girl Scout.
Bootleg fell off a truck or something.
Right?
And I know
some like a slightly different shade of green.
Yeah.
That's not a real Girl Scout.
I think some farmers markets too allow Girl Scouts to set up a booth in their market, and they, love having the Girl Scouts there, and they host them and all of that stuff. So if that's your prerogative at your market, that's great. We're just talking about Girl Scouts that show up uninvited or come to a market where that's not something that's allowed. Like we don't let them, we have a
saturated bakery group, of local bakers. So, if you don't have a lot of bakeries at your market, or if you have a kind of a public service area where you typically let local organizations set up, that might make sense on a certain week, but not week after week, and probably not right next to your bakery vendor.
Yeah, and not on the corner, because that just looks odd. Confusing. I mean, it's just confusing. Yeah. It adds to the confusion.
Yeah. So before we get into some sort of conflict management, conflict resolution type tools, what is the difference between what we're calling a pirate vendor? You might have a nicer name for them. And if you do have one, shoot us an email.
Yeah. I hope there's no pirates that are taking offense.
We can add it to our farmers market lexicon.
That's right.
So what's the difference between a pirate vendor and like a busker?
So buskers, at least in San Diego, absolutely have the right to be there. And what we try to do with buskers is just sort of moderate conflicts between buskers who both want to be on the same corner on the same day. So we try to provide a little scheduling guidance and encourage them to talk to each other and control the number of buskers that are in any square block, just so that it's not cacophonous. But buskers are considered an art form because they're music, and so they're protected by certain free speech governance rules.
And they're not selling a product. They're usually have a tip jar out, or they might have their CDs or something.
Yeah.
But they're not like selling a food product. They're not selling an item. So it's just a different kind of category. Sometimes you'll get a really great busker that adds a lot to your market, like a talented musician that'll come and play for tips and just is a welcome pirate vendor or busker. But
so we consider buskers different than pirate vendors because they're not selling.
And I wanted to bring this up because we have in the past had what someone may consider a busker, but then on their table, like we had this really cool kind of like...
Oh, the didgeridoo guy.
Okay, the didgeridoo guy. He doesn't fit in my category.
Okay.
But we had this like poet that would like type out little like on the fly poetry.
Mm-hmm.
But one day he had a bunch of poetry books that he was also trying to sell on this like other little table.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to politely tell him like, you're welcome to do a live poetry performance where somebody walks away with a little piece of paper that you typed on your typewriter, but you can't sell these like pre-written little books of poetry because that we have a book vendor here at the market.
A book vendor, a journal vendor. Yeah. So it's like
so sometimes there are kind of overlaps.
Yeah, kind of gray lines.
Yeah.
But the poetry, I mean, I like the poetry guy when he just types up a little poetry for, and then he'll have a little like tip jar out. So I feel like that is it enhances the market. Whereas selling something that is also being sold in the market, that detracts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and so that kind of leads us into what you can do to deal with pirates, unauthorized vendors, whatever you want to call them. And one of the things is developing relationships with them so that you can explain to them, let's just not be disrespectful of the vendors that have paid to be there. We do have a few people we tolerate. We've got an incense guy that's been around, I think, longer than any other vendor. I think he was there the first day, almost 15 years ago, and he's still there. And he, every once in a while, will kind of interface with other unauthorized vendors and say, hey, you can't do that, man. It's not cool. And,
he's like our little, just like our inside guy that he knows the rules. He's respectful.
He stays outside the market at a certain amount. And if he has a vendor that his incense bothers, he'll move away. He'll move to a different kind of area.
He doesn't like holler at shoppers. He doesn't set anything up on the ground. He's just carrying all of his stuff. And he's just really mild-mannered and sweet.
And he actually does stand in front of the dumpsters, which stink. And so he has his incense, and I actually feel like he's doing like a public service because when we had like during the COVID shutdown eras where we were having to like count people in and out, that exit right there, whoever had to work there was just like, miserable. Luckily they were wearing a mask because it was super stinky. And so Terrence has his incense. He's always like burning a stick or two. and it is helpful.
It's in a good
Sweet.
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he does understand the rules. And the typewriter poets guys, actually, they are usually good about, we'll say, oh, you can't be there. That's an ADA accessibility curb. You've got to move X amount of feet away from that. And they're always respectful about kind of picking up their stuff and moving. We have a good relationship with them. And so they listen to us. And like dealing with any other actual authorized vendor, one of the keys to communication is also explaining why you're asking somebody to do something. So instead of, as Bridget was saying, instead of saying, hey, shoo, get out of here, say, hey, I just want you to understand that when you're giving things away, that cuts down on the people that are buying food from a vendor who's paid to be here and has to have insurance and permits. So if you explain why it's a problem, it usually gets a better reaction.
I will say, based on experience too, if you explain that because of the other small farmers and vendors at the market, it's a problem versus I'm the market manager, this is my market. Like you kind of, if you go with like the queen of the market kind of attitude, that doesn't get a good response. I never even like say anything about myself. I'm just like, hey, like these guys, like it's disrespectful to these other vendors because they're making a living this way. So.
Yeah. And also, like if you, as a market manager, if you keep up to date on any, rules surrounding that, and I know in the past, Bridget, when like we have had somebody there, you've like respectfully told them like, you can't be within this close to the market, but like right outside here, you can go. Or if you know your neighborhood well enough, you can direct them to another area that
might be busy for another reason.
Like, they'll have foot traffic, but it's not directly next to the market. Just be like, hey, actually, there's a little piazza over here, or there's a park over here that you might do better at. And there's no rules that say you can't sit up there. So why don't you relocate a little farther away from the market? And some people have been like, oh, okay. And they just pack up their little table and cruise over there.
Like kind of appreciate the information that I'm telling it to them nicely before someone is yelling at them somewhere else. I try to take that approach like, hey, like I know the rules. I'm very up to date on like, you can't block ADA walkways. You can't be within 200 feet of a like permitted event. Like you can't be in front of a business. So I kind of give them these hints in a nice way and suggest some other areas in town. I mean, we're in a really busy area of town, so there's a lot of places that they can go.
Yeah, a lot of alternatives.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in a smaller neighborhood or maybe like your market is the place to be and it is the busy place, there might not be anywhere else that you can direct people to go. So you have to kind of go with a little alternate kind of strategy there.
Yeah. And so just being calm and kind, and if they are a recurring unofficial vendor, trying to build some sort of bridge there where you can understand each other. I don't know how this could be communicated, but at one of our other markets, on our Sunday market, there was a little pirate vendor. He had like a push cart and he was like pushing around because there's a really lovely park right there. But this is a very small market. It's kind of it's an up and coming market. So I feel like these pirate vendors are can be more detracting. But there's a few vendors that were buying from this pirate vendor. And our really lovely operations manager had to go tap these vendors on the shoulder and say, would you stop buying lunch from this guy when you could be buying lunch from these guys?
These fellow vendors.
And so it definitely had to kind of be like a mommy talk correction moment with the vendors and be like, hey, you can go get this guy's whatever, like, weird nachos that he's selling out of this cart, like later, but not in
also
customers.
Don't do that.
Customers. Yeah, please don't do that.
That's happened so much.
I'm hearing kettles calling other things, other pots things, as you two are admitting to drinking your Once Upon a Farm juices and slugging down.
I had one Luna bar with starter.
I didn't drink it in the info.
Yeah, just tuck it in your pocket. But I have heard there was like a Red Bull kind of guy there a couple years ago. And it's like, I'm kicking him out while I'm telling him like, get out of here. Like these poor vendors don't want you here. I'm hearing just like, and I turn around, it's all the vendors. They're just like drinking Monster Energy. I'm like, put that down. I'm trying to kick him out. Like at least wait till he's gone and then put it in a cup and drink it.
Put it in your mug.
Yeah, right. In your mug. Yeah, so it's a fine line between like maybe it is something that you want. We have had some not really food people, but people like handing out flyers and things like that. And I've been able to say, hey, like we don't allow that here, but that would be a great sponsorship. I think when like that yoga studio opened up down the street, I was like, hey, we can't stand here.
Booth.
Yeah,
and it was like
convert some people.
Yeah, and so she's like, oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know that was a possibility.
We actually had a clothing vendor too that would show up on the corner. She only did it once or twice, but then we said, look, go online. Here's the link. Apply as a regular vendor. Yes, it's going to cost you something, but you'll get to stay here all day. People won't be shooing you away.
Yeah, and you'll make more money.
She turned out to be a fairly successful vendor.
Yeah, they just don't know. That's what it is. Like, go with the approach of like low awareness. And I do think that sometimes these guys or gals they get a little abrasive like at first because they just feel like embarrassed that someone's telling them to leave, or they feel like they have like a right to be there. So my best advice is like, you need to approach a conversation really calm. And then even if they come abrasive first, like just stay calm and just kind of explain your position. I have seen so many of them, like they calm down. Like they just need a minute to be like, hey, like, why can't I do it? And then once you explain it, they'll be like, all right, yeah, like that makes sense. Like I've had a lot of pleasant conversations, I feel like, with pirates because I just kind of explain like what the problem is. And then they say, okay, like they'll chill out and, be redirected. So don't get frustrated if they're abrasive at first. I say just kind of stick with the conversation.
And then conflict resolution.
Yeah. And then sometimes they will just be super pissed and they won't leave. And honestly, unless you're going to handcuff them and drag them away, you can't do anything about it.
True.
So
yeah,
you have actually only so much power. And we definitely advise a lot of times we have staff that's just not comfortable talking to those folks. So we typically, except for a small core of staff people that's good at it, we have them report to the manager.
They call Bridget.
They call Bridget. That's right.
You do.
Could you talk to this guy?
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and I never make a staff member do those kind of confrontations if they're not comfortable with it. Some people just don't like conflict.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
That's fine.
And we would certainly never encourage a staff member to tell somebody, and if they got an aggressive reaction or a, uncooperative attitude back, there's only so much you can do. We're not going to ask you to put yourself in the path of abuse, whether physical or verbal even. If they're not going to be cool and play nicely with us, then we're probably going to back off.
Yeah. And there's times where you just walk away. Just like don't make a big scene, because that also just reflects really poorly on your market.
Negative.
You just got to take the higher ground.
Well, because I know that I have been in situations where I'm talking to a pirate vendor about not being there, and they'll have somebody that's bought from them or was looking at their stuff and say, hey, why are you picking on that guy?
Yeah.
There's all these other people selling. Why can't he sell?
When the customers
don't get it either.
The worst thing to have happen is have a customer get involved because they don't have a clue.
They have no idea
Love
about the insurance and the permits and all that stuff. Again, it's not just these unauthorized vendors. It's most of the world doesn't understand that farmers markets don't just happen to, hashtag.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reminder. And just like in all farmers market things, it's like you're trying to like wrangle all these like wild business owners. And then sometimes you just have to be like, you know what? Is it the worst thing if this person is doing this? You kind of just have to be like, at a certain point, just surrender and be like,
unless they're selling CBD cookies to kids.
Yes. I mean, and sometimes
and you call someone.
Yeah, and you can. A lot of times there are rules and actual laws about this now. Whether your police force is going to step away from a real issue to come talk to a pirate vendor is uncertain and unlikely. But they can, especially if you've got somebody that's being super aggressive with either your staff or other vendors or customers. Certainly you can resort to, calling the police or the security, whoever manages your event.
Yeah. I always just kind of think of like, okay, then what's happening? Then the police are at my market.
And that's not a good luck.
That's not good luck because some people are like, oh, police, go to the farmer's market. So yeah, just kind of, after you've woken up at 3 a.m. and have worked a long day at the market, all these things have to go running through your head. So trying to make a decision about what's best for the market and what hill are you going to die on here?
Yeah.
And that's why we have those Our Job is Weird t-shirts.
Yep.
What about just real quick, since we're past kind of political season, but it seems to come around again every year.
It's never going to stop.
It's never ending. Ugh, it's my least favorite. Not political season, but kind of that. But the petitioners, I feel like petitioners are way harder to have any kind of reasonable conversation with. I don't think
they just want those signatures.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really been successful.
And there's nobody that welcomes them.
No.
So they don't have another place to go.
Yeah, you can't really point them somewhere else. I would never tell them to go near anyone else. So I have not had much success ever getting them. The only time that I do sometimes talk them down is if they're approaching customers that are like at the vendor's booth or like in line somewhere. I can be like, hey, like you're interrupting a sale and these guys are here to make money. So sometimes they'll say like,
if they're speaking to a vendor, you can be like, that person's at work right now.
Yeah.
They can't speak with you.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of stuff.
And some of them will be respectful, but some of that is probably the group that you least often can hit a respectful tone and relationship with, it seems like.
For sure. I just feel like they have that kind of brick wall up all the time, even like the Save the Children people and like those kind of things that are just kind of year round. So
Yeah.
we don't have no advice for you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. We had that really aggressive Greenpeace group for a while.
Oh,
Like I really wanted to print those shirts that said "Eat the whales." I was just so angry, and I love whales. Don't get me wrong.
they were just
They were
rude.
just that was an aggressive group, but I feel like we've seen Greenpeace back at some of the markets, and they've been better lately. So maybe they've had an organizational change where they did not, maybe a leadership change where somebody stopped encouraging people to be aggressive and abusive to try to collect donations.
Mhm.
And we have a very persistent Scientologist.
Yes.
Hands out pamphlets.
Yes.
Again, kind of gets into that free speechy kind of area where you can't honestly do much about that.
Yeah. I just tell them, like, please don't block the ADA walkway.
Right.
I mean, I feel like ADA trumps free speech sometimes. So you got to kind of play your cards, but just please don't get in the walkway and please don't interfere in sales. And then it's kind of like, what can you do? And I know some markets, we've had podcast episodes before with other market managers where they have like an area where people can go, like a free speech area, which is like, oh my gosh, I would never. But I'm glad it works for some other markets. And maybe that's where these people can be directed. Maybe you can give them an area like, hey, can you please go stand over there? Like it is a high traffic area, but then you're not in the way.
This is where customers go looking for information like yours.
Yeah, they love to talk to you.
Table.
Yeah.
Go sit over there.
And some customers love it, just because it's, I mean, you have to kind of look at your customer base. Like, are they enjoying this? Like, is this something that they want to do? Maybe
Some
provide them a
probably do.
space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all good tips.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck out there with those pirate vendors.
Good luck on the 7 C's.
Yeah, good luck on the 7 C's. If you have a different term that you use, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email.
I want to talk to the manager at the Ballard Market. I want him to call in or tag us because there's a very elaborate meat and cheese vendor that sets up about a quarter of a block from the market, has a huge setup, and clearly looks like it's part of the market and apparently it's not. So I want to know what his experience is with that.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, so if you're
Imagine
hearing
it's
this,
not good.
If you're listening,
Call in. Meat and cheese. Call the health department. Oh, boy.
gotta love it.
Then they'll come to your market, though. Do a little, while I'm here, I'll do an inspection.
Which we love.
Which we love.
you backfire real quick.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
love seeing them.
Good luck out there, everyone.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Vendor 101 for supporting new farmers and vendors, saving market managers time, and helping farmers markets thrive, and for their support of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Find more information by clicking the Vendor 101 logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow Farmers Market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.